My parents told my husband they'd only pay for my wedding on one condition: my older sister gets to walk down the aisle first. In a wedding dress. At my ceremony. My husband smiled, shook their hands, and said deal. What they didn't know is that he'd already hired security to make sure she never got past the front door. If you've ever been the invisible child in your own family, the one whose achievements got ignored, whose pain got dismissed, whose big moments got hijacked by someone else, this story is going to feel like justice served on a silver platter. Hit that like button, subscribe, and buckle up, because what this couple pulled off is one of the most patient, savage revenge plots I've ever told. Let's get into it. My name is Claire, and for as long as I can remember, I was the shadow in my own house. Not the shadow of some celebrity or some tragic lost sibling everyone mourned. No, I was the shadow of a very much alive, very much present older sister named Madison. And in my family, that shadow never once let the sun touch me. Let me paint you the picture, because you need to understand exactly how deep this rot went before you can appreciate exactly how satisfying the ending is. When Madison and I were kids, my parents, Robert and Diane, ran their household like a dictatorship with exactly one favored citizen. If Madison accused me of something, it was treated as gospel truth. If I accused Madison of something, even with proof sitting right there in front of them, the punishment always found a way to land heavier on me. My birthday cake had to be Madison's favorite flavor, because heaven forbid she sit through a party and not enjoy the dessert. Mine could be anything, because apparently my taste buds didn't matter on my own birthday. I want you to sit with that for a second, because it's such a small detail. A cake flavor. But when you're 7 years old and you realize your own birthday isn't even about you, something starts to crack quietly in the back of your mind. And it never really stops cracking. As we got older, it got worse. Madison struggled to keep friends. I never fully understood why, whether it was something she did or just bad luck, but once she noticed I had friends and she didn't, I stopped being background noise to her. I became a target. She'd accuse my friends of things they didn't do. My parents would believe her without blinking, and one by one, my social life got dismantled. Your sister says they're not good people. Why can't you be more like your sister and just enjoy family time? I was drowning, and the only air I got came from my extended family, my cousins, my aunts and uncles, who lived nearby and who I could occasionally escape to. At one family gathering, when I was maybe 12, someone asked why I never came to hang out anymore. And with the brutal honesty only a kid has, I told the truth. I wasn't allowed to have friends because my sister didn't have any. The room went quiet. And then it exploded, not at me, but at my parents, who suddenly had a family full of aunts and uncles asking some very uncomfortable questions. I got grounded for lying. Madison got transferred to a new school, at extra cost to my parents, because she couldn't handle the humiliation. But here's the thing, that didn't fix anything between us. If anything, it made her worse. Because now she knew exactly how much damage she could do to me with one sentence to our parents. And she never let that power go. You'd think it would get better as we grew into teenagers. It didn't. It got sharper. My first boyfriend came home to meet my family, and Madison showed up in something far too tight, batting her eyelashes, telling him how wonderful she was and how terrible I was. He was disgusted and came straight to tell me. And when my parents found out what happened, Madison had already gotten there first, with her own version, that he had hit on her, and she'd nobly refused out of loyalty to me. Guess who they believed? This happened twice. 2 separate boyfriends. 2 separate accusations. 2 separate relationships destroyed by a sister who resented that I had something, anything, that was mine and good. Meanwhile, Madison brought home exactly 1 boyfriend in all those years. He was paraded around like royalty. Why can't you find someone like him, Claire? Until he vanished, and suddenly he became a manipulative liar who used her. Convenient how that narrative always flipped once it stopped being useful. School wasn't any kinder. My grades were consistently good, but when I brought home an A, there was no celebration because you always get those. What's there to celebrate? When Madison brought home AB, we had actual cake. Actual cake for AB. While my A's disappeared into the void like they never happened, by the time graduation loomed, my parents had already made their decision clear without saying it outright. Madison, who couldn't get into a well-regarded school and had no scholarship, got a full ride, fully funded, no questions asked. Me. My mother sat me down and explained, almost gently, like she was doing me a favor, that they simply didn't have the money for both of us. Maybe once Madison finished, they'd see. And if I wanted to stay at home instead of going away, I'd be charged rent, bills, groceries. As an 18-year-old, I said okay. I didn't fight. I didn't cry in front of her. And I think that threw her off more than any tantrum could have, because by that point, I had already stopped expecting anything from them. I had spent years quietly preparing for exactly this moment, studying obsessively, using the isolation they forced on me as fuel. College wasn't a dream to me. It was an exit. I got the scholarship. Not Ivy League, not glamorous, but full ride, respectable program, real college. And the second I found out, I posted it publicly before I even told my parents privately, forcing their hand. They couldn't forbid me, without looking monstrous in front of the entire extended family who'd already caught them once. For a few days, they even acted proud. Then Madison got in their ears. Suddenly they were just checking if I was really sure, mentioning, unprompted, that Madison wasn't doing so well in her own program, so obviously I, being less capable and less trusted, would struggle even harder. I went anyway. College became the first place I ever actually breathed. I visited on holidays, kept contact loose, and quietly, carefully, never introduced anyone I dated to my family again. Meanwhile, Madison dropped out without ever officially not graduating. No announcement was ever made, which told me everything, and moved back home, paying no rent, no bills, landing a job at my mother's company through pure nepotism. This, somehow, was framed to me as an inspiring success story. And then I met Ryan. I need you to understand something about my husband, because he is the entire engine of everything that happens next in the story. I am, by nature and by years of conditioning, a doormat. I freeze in conflict. I cry when I'm angry instead of yelling. I'm the person who thinks of the perfect comeback 4 hours too late, lying awake replaying what I should have said. Ryan is not that person. Ryan is the person who claps back immediately, who genuinely enjoys drama, not causing it, but resolving it, dismantling it, winning it. If you wrong him and he doesn't respond right away, that's not him forgiving you. That's him building something worse. He is also, and I say this with complete affection, an absolute menace when someone he loves gets hurt. When we got engaged, we planned something simple, courthouse adjacent, low budget, because we'd rather spend real money on our honeymoon in Europe than on a single overpriced afternoon. We picked my hometown for logistics, since most of my family was still there. We sent the invitations. We thought that was that. Then my parents demanded to formally meet him. Ryan, ever the strategist, went in prepared. He'd even bought a small hidden recorder, fully expecting Madison to make a move on him so he could catch it and expose her to the whole family in one clean shot. He came home practically vibrating with excitement, not because of what he expected, but because reality had handed him something so much bigger. My parents and Madison sat him down. No flirting, no games. Instead, they made him an offer. They would pay for our entire wedding, venue, catering, dress, everything, on one single condition. Madison would walk down the aisle first. At my wedding, in her own wedding dress, with photos taken, with a cake for her afterward. Their justification? It wasn't proper for the younger sister to marry first. So Madison deserved the experience too, on my day, using my ceremony in front of my guests. Ryan told me later that his brain genuinely short-circuited for a moment. But somewhere in that silence, an idea was born, and instead of exploding right then and there, he told them he needed time to think about how to break it to me gently. He came home and told me everything, recording in hand as proof. And instead of collapsing into the hurt I expected to feel, something in me hardened. This wasn't cruelty anymore. This was almost comedic in its audacity. And Ryan was already grinning like a man who'd just been handed the greatest gift of his life. We spent that night brainstorming increasingly ridiculous revenge plans, most of which were, frankly, illegal or insane. His brother, the one voice of reason in this entire operation, talked us down from anything involving fake venue addresses or public humiliation stunts that could get us sued. So we landed on something elegant in its simplicity. Pretend to agree. Let them believe they'd won. And quietly hire security to make sure Madison never set foot inside. But if you think that was the whole plan, you clearly don't know my husband yet. For the next several months, my parents and Madison believed they were successfully manipulating us. In reality, we were running the most profitable con of their lives against them. Here's how it worked. Ryan would go with me to pick vendors, and we'd deliberately choose the cheapest options, the basic menu, the budget photographer, the plainest flowers. Then, separately, Ryan would take Madison to preview the nicer, more expensive versions, and sigh dramatically about how we didn't want to take advantage of my parents' generosity by choosing the better options. Every single time, Madison would march straight to our parents demanding they upgrade everything for poor Claire. And every single time, my parents would call me to insist, practically beg, that we take the top-tier package on them. Top-shelf catering, the best photographer in the city, premium flowers instead of the cheap filler we'd been settling for. All of it, paid in full, because they thought they were buying Madison's moment alongside mine. The dress was the one hiccup. My parents wanted me in something plain and unflattering. No surprise there. And when I refused over text, we had a small crisis, because now there was written proof I'd said no. Ryan went over in person and told them he'd handle it. Madison, fully complicit, actually suggested destroying my real dress, so I'd have no choice but to wear the ugly one. He agreed. He never intended to follow through. Every conversation about the plan happened strictly in person, never in writing. Ryan sold this by telling my parents I was controlling and paranoid, that I checked his phone, that I'd lose it if I found written evidence of anything involving my sister. It was a flawless excuse. When Madison tried texting him directly, I intercepted and replied instead, which only reinforced the story further. I want to be honest with you. Some of you might think it's strange that I encouraged my own husband to paint me as unhinged and controlling behind my back. But honestly, I found it hilarious. After a lifetime of being underestimated, dismissed, and lied about, watching my husband weaponize a fake version of me against the people who actually deserved it felt like poetic justice. We ended up with an expensive, beautiful wedding, funded entirely by the people who try to hijack it, while barely spending $1 of our own honeymoon fund. We called it back pay for emotional damages. The plan on their end was simple. Seat every guest, wait for the traditional late bride moment, and time Madison's arrival for exactly then. So by the time anyone realized what was happening, it would be too late to stop. We let them believe it, right up to the final hour. We hired real security, a professional who looked every bit the part, and kept him hidden until my parents had already arrived and taken their seats. His only instructions: do not, under any circumstances, let Madison inside. The text came in, Madison, 5 minutes out. My father stood at the entrance, ready to signal the ceremony to begin. My bridesmaids, briefed in advance, followed his cue without hesitation. The music started, the doors opened, and I walked out. Not Madison, me. My father's face went white. He scanned behind me, desperate, but the entrance where Madison should have been arriving was completely out of his line of sight from where he stood. Then his phone rang. Madison's name lit up the screen. He muttered something about something came up, and walked out of his own daughter's wedding, leaving me standing there in front of every single guest. Gasps rippled through the room. A friend of ours, in on the entire plan, loudly asked what had happened, and I let a tear fall as I said he'd told me it wasn't supposed to be me there. It wasn't exactly what he'd said, but it was close enough and devastating enough to make him look exactly as bad as he deserved. My friend ran off to check, which was really just cover to go stir chaos at the front gate. My mother disappeared soon after. And then, right on cue, my father-in-law swept in, took my arm, and walked me down the aisle in place of the man who just abandoned me. The wedding continued. It was, in every way that mattered, perfect. Here's what was happening outside, pieced together afterward from our security guard, our friend, and Ryan himself. Madison arrived, dressed head to toe in white, glowing with anticipation, and was stopped cold at the door. Our security guard, exactly as instructed, told her there must be some mistake because there was already a bride inside. My father tried to threaten him with the police. The guard calmly agreed. Go ahead, call them. He was hired legally and doing his job. By the time my father realized calling the police would only make things worse, it was already too late. Guests were starting to notice. Family was starting to gather. And the story that came pouring out, that they'd try to have Madison replace me at my own wedding, spread through the crowd like wildfire. And of course, cornered and exposed, my parents did exactly what people like that always do. They threw my husband under the bus. Ryan was summoned. He walked out with the calm, wounded confusion of a man being falsely accused, and denied everything. Every text, every planning conversation, all of it, clean, untraceable, because he'd made sure nothing ever existed in writing. When they demanded proof, they had none. He laughed in their faces. How convenient. Madison reportedly sank to the ground, sobbing, kicking her legs like a toddler having a full meltdown. My father looked ready to physically go after Ryan before security stepped in. And in front of everyone, extended family, friends, people who had heard whispers of how I'd been treated my whole life but never seen it laid bare like this, my parents and my sister were finally, publicly, undeniably exposed. No one believed them. Not one person. Because the story didn't add up, and Ryan simply had no motive that made sense to anyone standing there. They were asked to leave. My father had to physically drag Madison off the ground to get her out the door. And the wedding. It went on beautifully. Guests who'd witnessed the entire meltdown came back inside and spent the rest of the night treating me like the most important person in the room, probably overcompensating, but I didn't mind one bit. The moment that will stay with me forever isn't the vows, or the dancing, or even the honeymoon that followed. It's the image of my mother crying at the gate, my father's face cycling through purple and white with rage he couldn't direct at anyone who'd actually wronged him, and my sister sitting on the ground in a wedding dress that was never hers to wear, screaming into a night that, for once in my entire life, belonged completely to me. 4 years, I was the one nobody believed, the one whose truth never mattered next to my sister's lies. And in one single evening, in front of everyone who'd ever doubted me, the roles flipped so completely and so publicly that there was no walking it back. Looking back, I don't think my parents ever expected Ryan to actually agree to something so absurd. I think it was a bluff, a way to look generous to Madison while secretly hoping we'd refuse, giving them an excuse to pay for nothing. They just never accounted for marrying into a family that plays the long game better than they do that I would have loved a normal, loving family standing behind me on my wedding day. But since that was never going to happen, watching them lose, completely, publicly, on the one day they thought they'd finally win, was the closest thing to closure I've ever gotten. If this story had you gripping your phone in disbelief, smash that like button right now, and drop a comment telling me, what's the most satisfying revenge you've ever witnessed or pulled off yourself? I read every single one. And if you want more stories exactly like this, patient, savage, perfectly executed justice, hit subscribe, because trust me, this is far from the last one.